I guess I never saw it coming, and that's the kicker. Everyone always thinks they're the smart one, the one who'll see the signs, but I was blissfully unaware. My name's Jacob, and I had what I believed was a solid life. I had a good job, a decent house in a neighborhood that wasn't too shabby, and a wife, Amanda, who I thought was my partner in every sense. We'd been married for about 6 years, and while we weren't perfect, we had built a life together that I thought was unshakable. Amanda was like a force of nature, intelligent, charming, and with a wit that could cut through the dullest of dinner parties. But lately something felt off. At first it was subtle. She started spending more time on her phone, giggling at texts, and then quickly putting it down whenever I walked into the room. I brushed it off, convinced I was just being paranoid. Who was I to question her? After all, she was my wife. But then there were the late nights at work. "Just a project," she'd say, her voice tinged with a mix of irritation and amusement, as though I was being unreasonable for wanting to see her more. I wanted to believe her, but my gut was telling me something different. I noticed her clothes changing too, more form-fitting, more flirty. The little black dress she wore for our anniversary suddenly became a staple in her wardrobe. And when I asked her about it, she'd roll her eyes and say something like, "It's just fashion, Jacob. Can't I look good?" The day I discovered the affair was a whirlwind of confusion and anger. It started innocently enough. I was looking for my jacket in the back of the closet when I stumbled upon a crumpled receipt. At first, I thought it was just a random piece of trash, but the date caught my attention. It was from dinner at a fancy restaurant, one we had never been to. And to my horror, it wasn't just any dinner. The receipt was for two, a table for two, Amanda and my cousin, Eric. Eric and I grew up together, practically brothers. The thought that he could betray me like this was unfathomable. I felt my heart drop. I started connecting the dots, retracing her steps like a detective until everything came crashing down. Suddenly, those late nights and suspicious texts made unbearable sense. That evening I confronted Amanda. My hands were shaking as I brought up the receipt. "You had dinner with Eric. Care to explain that?" I demanded. The look on her face, shock, confusion, and then a flash of defiance, was something I'll never forget. She stammered, "It wasn't what you think. We were just discussing family matters." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Family matters. That was the excuse she went with. I kept my voice steady, trying to maintain control of the conversation. "Family matters. You could have called me to join, Amanda. This isn't like you at all." She quickly switched from defensive to accusatory. "You're overreacting, Jacob. I can't believe you're grilling me about who I hang out with." That was the moment I realized that I was not just dealing with infidelity, but a shifting dynamic in our relationship. Her tone was icy, and instead of remorse, I was met with irritation. I felt a surge of anger boiling beneath my skin. The betrayal wasn't just from the affair. It was in her refusal to own up to her actions. Emotions were spiraling. Out of control, anger, confusion, disbelief. I felt like the floor had dropped out from beneath me, leaving me in a pit of despair. How could she do this? How could Eric do this? The betrayal stung like nothing I had ever felt. As the confrontation escalated, I found myself questioning everything about our marriage. Was I really that blind? Or had I chosen to ignore the signs? My mind raced, and as I stood there, I felt the weight of my life crumbling around me. But more importantly, I had decisions to make. What was I going to do with this newfound knowledge? I had to think it through. Would I fight for my marriage? Would I confront both Amanda and Eric? Or was it time to cut them both off? The emotional roller coaster was just beginning. After that confrontation, I was left reeling. My heart felt heavy in my chest, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't quite pin down. Amanda had stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me standing in the living room, feeling more like a ghost in my own home than a husband. I didn't go after her. I needed space to think. I paced around the house, going through the motions but not really absorbing anything. The smell of Amanda's perfume lingered in the air, mixing with the tension that had suddenly filled every corner of our home. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, something to calm my nerves, I thought. But as I sipped, the warmth of the alcohol did little to ease the chill running down my spine. I picked up my phone and stared at it for a moment, contemplating whether I should call Eric. My blood boiled at the thought, but I held back. I didn't want to engage in a shouting match. I needed to think clearly. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts until I landed on my best friend, Mark. He was the type of guy who could listen, and I needed that. Mark answered on the first ring. "Jacob, what's up, man? Can we talk? It's urgent." He picked up on my tone immediately. "Sure, where do you want to meet? Let's just do it here." "I need to talk," I replied, my voice a mix of frustration and desperation. "About an hour." Later, Mark arrived. He looked concerned as I led him to the living room. "What's going on?" he asked, taking a seat on the couch. I poured another drink, my hands trembling as I relayed everything that had happened: the receipt, the confrontation, Amanda's betrayal. Each word felt heavier than the last. Mark listened intently, his brow furrowed in disbelief. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. "Dude, that's brutal. I can't believe Eric would do that. What's your plan?" I shook my head. "I don't know yet. I'm still processing it all. Part of me wants to confront them both and just lay it all out, but another part of me—" I paused, feeling the weight of betrayal wash over me again. "I don't want to stoop to their level." Mark nodded, leaning forward. "You've got to look out for yourself first, man. This is about your happiness now, but whatever you decide, don't act on impulse. Take your time." His words struck a chord. I needed clarity, not chaos. After Mark left, I spent the night tossing and turning in bed, unable to find a semblance of peace. I kept replaying our conversation in my head, thinking about the life Amanda and I had built together. How had it come to this? The next day, I decided to take a closer look at the situation. I knew Amanda would be at work for most of the day, and I used that time to sift through her things. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed answers. I found her laptop on the kitchen table and hesitated for a moment, a pang of guilt gnawing at me. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it, trying to remember her password. After a few failed attempts, I hit the jackpot with her birthday. The screen lit up, and I was met with a jumble of documents, spreadsheets, and then there it was, her email account. I clicked it open, my heart racing, hoping to find something that would explain everything. What I found was far worse than I anticipated. There were emails between Amanda and Eric, planning meetups, discussing intimate details of their encounters. I felt sick to my stomach as I read through the messages, each one cutting deeper than the last. I was reading their conversations like some twisted romance novel, and I was the fool who'd been left in the dark. The final email sealed it, a confession of sorts where Amanda talked about how she felt alive with Eric, and how she was tired of the same old routine with me. I slammed the laptop shut, anger coursing through my veins. It was one thing to hear her excuses, but another to read the cold, hard truth. I sat down, my hands shaking as I tried to gather my thoughts. The betrayal was palpable, and I knew I couldn't let this go unanswered. But how? I had options now. I could confront Amanda again, armed with the proof of her infidelity, or I could plot my revenge quietly. The idea of revenge made my heart race. After all, who wouldn't want to make their betrayer feel the same pain they had caused? But as I weighed my options, I realized that revenge could lead me down a path I wasn't sure I wanted to take. In that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't stoop to their level. Instead, I would focus on myself and my happiness. I would cut them both out of my life and rebuild something stronger without either of them. But first, I needed to confront Amanda one last time, this time with the evidence in hand. This was my life, and I deserved more than betrayal. I deserved peace of mind. I spent the rest of the day stewing over my plan, ready to confront Amanda with the evidence of her betrayal. My mind raced with possible outcomes. I knew this might be the most difficult conversation I'd ever have, but I had to do it. I was no longer willing to live in the shadows of her infidelity. When Amanda walked through the door that evening, I was already on edge. I could see she was in a good mood, chatting about her day, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Her laughter rang through the air, and for a brief moment I almost lost my resolve. How could I bring this up when she seemed so carefree? But I reminded myself of the emails, the dinner, and the lies. I couldn't let her charm disarm me again. I took a deep breath and interrupted her flow. "We need to talk." She looked at me, confusion washing over her face. "About what?" "About you and Eric," I said flatly. I could see her expression shift from confusion to defensive in an instant. "What do you mean?" She shot back, crossing her arms tightly across her chest. I pulled out my phone and opened the email app, scrolling to the damning threads. "I found your emails, the ones with Eric, the dinner plans, the intimate details. You can drop the act, Amanda. I know everything." Her face paled as I held the device up to her. First, she tried to laugh it off, saying things like, "You're taking this way too seriously, Jacob. We were just being friendly." But the desperation in her voice betrayed her. "I'm not stupid, Amanda. You were having an affair with my cousin. This isn't just being friendly. You invited him into our lives, into our home." My voice rose, and I was surprised by how calm I sounded despite the rage boiling inside me. She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "You can't deny it." "I have proof." I gestured toward my phone. "You wrote about how you feel alive with him. You said you were tired of our life together. This isn't merely a fling, this is betrayal at its worst." Her facade began to crack. I didn't mean it like that," she stammered, her confidence evaporating. I thought you weren't happy either. We've been distant, or were you just too busy cheating to notice?" I shot back, anger flaring again. "You didn't try to fix things, you just ran to Eric instead. This is not about us being distant, this is about you choosing to betray me." I watched as she struggled to find her words. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought it was just a phase, something fun." "Fun?" I echoed incredulously, my heart racing. "You think cheating is fun? You think lying to your husband is just something you do when you're bored?" Her expression morphed from defensive to desperate. "Please, Jacob, I thought you didn't care. You've been so busy with work, and I just needed someone to pay attention to me. I never wanted to hurt you." My chest tightened at her words. "You didn't just hurt me, Amanda. You shattered my trust. I can't just forget about this. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." Her voice became more frantic as she tried to reach out. "We can work this out, Jacob. We can go to counseling or something. I promise I'll do better." I shook my head. "No, you've made your choice. You chose Eric over me. You showed me who you really are, and I can't live like this. I won't be someone's second choice." I felt a sense of clarity wash over me as the anger turned into a resolve I never thought I'd possess. I was done with the lies, done with the games. I realized I had been holding on to a version of Amanda that no longer existed. The woman I thought I knew had revealed herself in the most painful way possible. As the realization set in, I made a decision that felt liberating. "I'm done, Amanda. I'm cutting ties with you and Eric. This marriage is over." Her face crumpled, the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, Jacob, don't do this. I can change. I promise I'll make it right." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "It's too late for that. You've shown me your true colors, and I can't ignore it. I need to focus on myself now. I deserve a life without betrayal." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to take the first step towards rebuilding my life, free from the weight of her deception. That night, I sat alone, the silence of the house echoing around me. I thought about everything I had lost, but also about the freedom I was about to gain. I had a long road ahead, but I was determined to move forward, stronger and happier, without the shadows of betrayal hanging over me. In that moment, I understood something essential. Peace of mind was worth the fight, even if it meant letting go of someone I once loved deeply. I was ready to reclaim my happiness, and that was a start. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. After the confrontation with Amanda, the reality of my situation hit me like a freight train. I felt a mix of relief and overwhelming sadness, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. My mind played tug-of-war with itself. Should I reach out to friends? Should I sit down with family? Or should I just retreat and let the dust settle? I chose the latter for a couple of days, isolating myself in the house, which now felt more like a prison than a home. I went through our belongings, each item a reminder of happier times. I found old photographs, souvenirs from vacations, and little notes she had left around the house. They all felt like a mockery now, fragments of a life that no longer existed. As I packed up Amanda's things, determining what to keep and what to donate, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. Each item I placed in the box felt like I was shedding a layer of the betrayal that had weighed so heavily on my shoulders. When I uncovered her prized collection of shoes, I smiled bitterly. I had long since stopped counting how many times she had chosen to wear something that wasn't meant for me. But as cathartic as packing was, I knew I couldn't hide forever. The world kept spinning and I had to make some practical choices. I reached out to a lawyer to discuss my options and get a handle on the divorce process. Sitting across from him in his office, I felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. This was a step toward reclaiming my life, but it was also a reminder of the painful journey ahead. Divorce can be complicated, Jacob, my lawyer Tom said, looking at me with a knowing expression. But you seem to have a solid case given the circumstances. What do you mean? I asked, perplexed. Well, if you have proof of infidelity, it can make the process smoother, especially concerning asset division and custody if there are children involved. I didn't have children yet, but the thought of building a family with Amanda had been a dream that now felt shattered. We don't have kids, but we did own a house together. What happens to that? Tom explained the division of assets, and I listened intently, trying to absorb it all. I was surprised by how calm I felt discussing what had once been mine and Amanda's, knowing it would soon be just mine. The idea of starting fresh felt daunting, but also exhilarating. After our meeting, I took a deep breath as I left the office, feeling a sense of control that I hadn't felt in days. I decided to move back in with my parents temporarily. It felt like a regression in some ways, but I needed the support and distance from the betrayal that lingered in every corner of my house. Moving back in with my parents had its challenges, but they were understanding and supportive. They could tell something was off, but I wasn't ready to go into details just yet. My dad, sensing my struggle, would often ask, "Want to go for a walk, son?" Those walks became a sanctuary for me, time to process my thoughts and just breathe. I started to realize that I wasn't just grieving the end of my marriage. I was also letting go of a version of myself that had been complicit in the lies. I had to learn to forgive myself for being so blind and trusting. One day, while walking through one of the parks near my childhood home, I ran into an old friend. From college, Sarah. She looked different but familiar, and we fell into easy conversation as if no time had passed. "What's new with you?" she asked. I hesitated, unsure how much to share, but something about her warm smile made it easier. "I'm going through a divorce," I admitted, feeling a mix of vulnerability and relief. "Oh, Jacob, I'm so sorry. That sounds tough," she said, her expression softening. "If you ever need to talk or hang out, I'm here." Her kindness was a balm I didn't know I needed. We exchanged numbers, and that simple gesture rekindled a feeling of hope within me. It wasn't a full solution, but it was a reminder that I didn't have to go through this alone. Over the next few weeks, I began to embrace my new reality. I spent more time with friends, rediscovering hobbies I had set aside while married. I started running again, channeling my frustration into something productive. Each mile felt like a release, a way to push back against the pain and reclaim my life. Every time I ran, I envisioned the future I wanted, one where I could build something better, something stronger. With each step, I was shedding the weight of my past. The memories of Amanda started to fade, replaced by the determination to thrive. Still, there were moments when the pain would creep back in. Late at night, when silence would engulf the house, I'd find myself staring at the ceiling, thinking of the moments we had shared. But I quickly learned to redirect those thoughts into a vision of what I wanted next. I knew I was on a long journey, and I was ready to face it head-on. I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing to live again. The idea of love and companionship didn't feel distant anymore. It felt attainable, but only when I was ready. I had learned something powerful through this whole ordeal, that my happiness couldn't depend on someone else. It had to come from within. And with that realization, I felt like I was starting to stand up again. I could rise above the hurt and build a life that was truly mine. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself navigating the complexities of divorce while simultaneously rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. The initial pain had dulled, but the lessons I learned were becoming clearer with every passing day. I was learning to embrace my independence, allowing myself to explore new possibilities. Living with my parents offered a unique comfort, especially as I worked through the complications of winding down my life with Amanda. I spent evenings piecing together my financial situation, drafting documents, and figuring out what needed to be done regarding our house. It was an overwhelming task, but I was determined to take each step one at a time. One late afternoon, while I was going through old photos to decide what to keep and what could be discarded, I stumbled upon a picture of Amanda and me on a beach vacation. We were both laughing, carefree, and full of life. For a moment, I was transported back to that day, and I felt a pang of nostalgia. But then the reality of what had transpired hit me like a wave. That joyful image felt like a cruel reminder of the person I thought I knew. I tossed the picture aside, resolute in my decision to move forward. As I prepared for the next stages of the divorce, I finally reached out to Amanda to discuss logistics. We agreed to meet at a local cafe, a neutral ground where we could talk without the emotional baggage of our home. I arrived early, my heart racing as I thought about seeing her again. I had gone through so much, and the thought of facing her filled me with a mixture of dread and defiance. When she walked in, I noticed the difference in her demeanor. She looked disheveled, as if the weight of what had happened was taking its toll on her. "Jacob," she said, her voice soft as she took a seat across from me. "Hey," I replied curtly, feeling a rush of emotions. I was determined not to let her charm suck me back in. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she began, her eyes searching mine for a glimmer of understanding. "I know I messed up, and I'm so sorry for how things turned out." I remained silent, letting her words hang in the air. I was done with excuses. "I want to make this as easy as possible for both of us," she continued, shifting her focus to the paperwork on the table. "I've consulted with a lawyer, and I think it'll be best if we settle this amicably." Her approach was unexpected, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of skepticism. Amicably? After everything? I know it's a lot to ask, but I don't want to drag this out. I've realized that what I did was wrong, and I want to take responsibility for it. Her honesty caught me off guard. Perhaps she was genuinely remorseful, but the damage was done. "Amanda, you can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. This isn't just about paperwork, it's about trust." "I know, and I don't expect that," she replied, looking down at her hands. "I just want to make things right. I want to help you get what's fair." It was a small step, but I wasn't ready to drop my guard. "We'll go through the legal process. I have no interest in dragging this out either. I want to move on." As we discussed the logistics of dividing our assets, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I was no longer the confused husband fighting for a marriage that had already ended. I was a man ready to take control of his future, one step at a time. Once the meeting wrapped up, I felt an unexpected lightness in my chest as I walked out of the cafe. I had faced her, and I had stood my ground. I was reclaiming my power, and it felt good. In the days that followed, I continued to meet with my lawyer, navigating the legalities. I also reached out to Sarah, who had become a supportive friend through my journey. We started hanging out more often, going for walks, grabbing coffee, and simply enjoying each other's company. One evening, after spending hours talking about life, dreams, and aspirations, she looked at me and said, "You know, Jacob, I've always thought you were an amazing guy. It's sad to see you go through this, but you're stronger than you realize." Her words struck a chord. I had spent so long feeling like a victim in my circumstances, but in that moment I felt seen. I was not just a man scarred by betrayal. I was a man capable of moving forward, of carving out a new identity for myself. As summer turned to fall, I found myself feeling more at peace. The divorce papers were finalized, and I was officially free from the constraints of a life I had outgrown. I took a deep breath and allowed myself to envision a future that was no longer tied to Amanda. I began to explore new hobbies, things I had always wanted to do but had put aside. I signed up for a cooking class, something I had always enjoyed but never had the chance to pursue. I also started volunteering at a local charity, a way to give back while surrounding myself with positive people. Slowly but surely, I began to feel hope. The pain of the past was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. I was crafting a new narrative, one that was rooted in my own happiness. One evening while cooking dinner, I thought about how far I had come. I had transformed my heartbreak into strength, my pain into purpose. I realized that I was finally ready to embrace love again when it came. This journey had taught me that sometimes you have to break to rebuild, and I was learning to build something beautiful. The scars of my past would always be a part of me, but they wouldn't define me. I was ready to step into my future with open arms. As the leaves turned vibrant shades of orange and gold, I found myself in a place of acceptance, a transition that I hadn't anticipated but welcomed wholeheartedly. The chaos of the past had settled into a quiet resolve, and I was finally ready to embrace my new life. I continued to build connections with friends, and Sarah became a constant presence in my life. We shared laughs over dinners, deep conversations about our dreams, and even felt the spark of something more as we got to know each other. It was strange, yet comforting, to open my heart again after what had happened with Amanda. One chilly evening, while sitting on the couch in my parents' living room, I finally broached the subject of my divorce with them. I had avoided diving into the details for so long, but I knew it was time to share my journey with those who had supported me through the upheaval. "Mom, Dad, can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with nerves. They put down their evening paper and turned their full attention to me. "Of course, Jacob, what's on your mind?" my dad asked, the concern evident in his eyes. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my story lifting. "I've gone through a lot these past months. The divorce finalized recently and it's been a whirlwind, but I'm starting to feel like myself again." My mom reached over and placed her hand on mine, her expression warm and encouraging. "We're so proud of you for how you've handled everything. It takes a lot of strength to face that kind of betrayal." I nodded, feeling the tears prick the corners of my eyes. I thought losing Amanda would crush me, but I've realized that it was the best thing for me. I was so wrapped up in making it work that I ignored the signs, and I lost myself in the process. My dad chimed in, his voice steady and supportive. "It's a hard lesson, son, but it's clear that you're learning and growing from it. That's all we can do, learn from our experiences." As we talked, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I wasn't just sharing my struggles. I was embracing the journey that had led me back to myself. I had spent far too long being defined by someone else's actions, and now I was ready to reclaim my identity. As winter approached, I decided it was time to move out of my parents' house and find a place of my own. With the divorce finalized, I was eager to create a space that reflected who I was now, a space free of reminders of betrayal, filled instead with possibilities. I found a cozy apartment in a vibrant neighborhood, close to parks and cafes. Moving in felt like a rite of passage, a step into a new chapter. I painted the walls, arranged my furniture, and decorated with items that brought me joy. Each corner of my new home was a testament to my journey, an embodiment of the healing I had undergone. One evening, after a long day of unpacking, I collapsed on my new couch, exhausted but exhilarated. I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted to new beginnings. I had taken control of my life again, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely happy. As I settled into my new routine, I had moments of reflection. I thought about Amanda and the life we had shared. There would always be a part of me that mourned what could have been, but I was learning that sometimes letting go was the best decision one could make. I continued to invest in myself, taking classes, traveling, and building friendships that were rooted in respect and honesty. I immersed myself in community service, discovering a passion for helping others that reignited my spirit. The more I opened myself up to new experiences, the more I felt alive. And then there was Sarah. What started as a friendship began to blossom into something deeper. We went out for dinner more frequently, sharing our dreams and vulnerabilities. One evening, while stargazing on a rooftop, I felt the warmth of her hand in mine, and it dawned on me that I was ready to embrace love again. "Jacob," she said softly, her eyes sparkling under the night sky, "I'm really glad we met. I never expected to find someone who understands what I've been through." I smiled, feeling the connection between us strengthen. "Me too, Sarah. You've brought light back into my life when I needed it most." As we leaned in for a kiss, I felt a rush of excitement and hope. I knew that love would look different this time around, more grounded in honesty and mutual respect. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that the betrayal I had faced was not the end. It was a catalyst for my transformation. I had learned that I was resilient, capable of rising from the ashes of heartbreak, and ready to create a life built on my terms. I understood now that peace of mind wasn't just about avoiding pain. It was about embracing the journey, learning from it, and allowing myself the freedom to love again. As I stood on the brink of this new chapter, I felt a sense of gratitude for all I had endured. I was no longer defined by my past. I was Jacob, strong, hopeful, and ready to face whatever life had in store for me. And that was enough.